From one user going from broke to millions and back down to broke in a month, to another user YOLOing his dad's money, we're gonna go over the maddest Wall Street bets trades of the meltdown. RobBoost330 is a user who decided that he was gonna YOLO his portfolio every day and became so attached that he couldn't stop. Disregarding Rob's first ever post on the Rise of Kingdom subreddit, he made his first post to Wall Street Bets on May 14th. With SPY and QQQ, his portfolio grew 178% in the past week alone. But don't get too excited just yet, because he was still down over 7K all time. For some reason, Helipad668 thought that this post was some sort of CIA government conspiracy and said, "If any of you believe these gain posts here, you are a low IQ idiot." Rob got back saying, "This ain't fake, boy." His $50,000 portfolio was now worth $25,000 a day later. Despite Rob's 50% fall in a day, Helipad668 still for some reason couldn't believe someone could make lucky or unlucky trades. Over the next few days, he luckily worked his way back up to $56,000. After finally breaking even on Robinhood, some would say that taking a break from trading would be wise. Rob woke up that morning and got ready for his day at work like usual. Work was starting soon, but Rob wasn't really worried about that just yet. He instead was getting ready to YOLO his entire portfolio on 0 DTE QQQ calls. He threw $48,000 flat into calls at the $520 strike price. The stock opened in the red at about $515 a share, and of course, if things didn't take off soon, Rob's money would be gone forever. With some sort of financial wizard spell, QQQ hit his strike price in just about half an hour. His $56,000 portfolio jumped to $98,000. If you think a 75% gain is enough for him, then you must be out of your mind. Rob was fully dedicated to striking it rich. Kinda like Elon, I love you. He says he's currently using his paychecks to YOLO his way back into the green after going negative on margin and taking a break. He made it clear that 1 million was the number that he was going for. He also let us in on his secret trading strategy. You might think that these are all jokes, but Rob is dead serious. He took a 4-day break from posting, but not from trading, and broke into 6 figures. It was May 23rd, and Rob immediately threw $28,000 into 0 DTE QQQ calls, and was initially in the green by a few thousand, but by lunchtime, he was down almost 20K. Rob averaged down not 1, not 2, but 3 times, tying up a total of $105,000. He only had $500 in buying power left, so if these trades didn't pan out the way he wanted them to, he'd be flipping burgers forever. Luckily though, QQQ's dip was short-lived, and he sold for a $70,000 gain. Rob went from 25 to 190K, and we've seen a situation like this 1,000 times. Rob was not gonna give up just yet. Rob says that instead of setting stop losses, he just, watches the stock and prays. The weekend came along and gave Rob some time to reflect on his actions. And after reflecting long and hard, he was back to business. That morning, he YOLO'd into, once again, QQQ calls and SharpLink gaming stock as it started rocketing. SharpLink actually 5x'd that day, and QQQ was also very strong. He posted another win for Monday market. The only issue was that it wasn't Monday. Apparently, Rob was partying a little too hard over the weekend and just skipped over Monday. Anyway, days of the week didn't really matter all that much because he may not have known it yet, but the following day would be one that would go down in history books. He threw everything into QQQ and Nvidia calls that expired 0 and 2 days later, respectively. Well, the first half of Rob's day was very volatile. No joke, every half an hour he went from being up 20,000 to down 20,000. Rob could have sold to be about break even for the day, but Rob is not a chicken. But sometimes it seems like chickens are the real winners because he quickly started losing tens of thousands of dollars a minute. But then, in the blink of an eye, he was back in the green by 37K. Phew! That $267 he had on the sidelines was definitely not gonna hold him over. Rob now had almost $300,000 in his portfolio. He could easily just invest in an index fund and make some pretty solid passive income that way. But Rob was not dumb. He wanted to YOLO his whole portfolio every day because, quote, 15% of small money is small gains, while 15% of everything is a great day if green. He isn't rich, but also isn't worried about losing his money because he plans on staying lucky. That last sentence may foreshadow some bad, catastrophic events, just saying. Over the course of the next week, he grew his portfolio to nearly $550,000, 55% of the way to his big goal. He threw everything into more 0 DTE QQQ calls, and hey, if this play doubled his money, he would make it past a mil. But lunchtime rolled around and QQQ dropped nearly 1.5% in just over an hour. Rob was left with this. He may have been down 90%, but he figured that he was just gonna let his calls run on autopilot. Somewhat luckily, QQQ rebounded a decent amount by the end of the day, but not enough to take him back into the green. His $497,000 loss got cut down to $300,000, so that means he should still have about $250K left in his portfolio. And that's all the updates we have up until June 3rd, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see how the rest of his story plays out. I thought the story was over, but on June 6th, Rob came back to the subreddit with this screenshot. During his 3-day hiatus, Rob was making profitable trades and kept them all to himself. But now, he flew past his $1 million goal and couldn't stop himself from spilling the beans. Rob went from 25K to 500K, back down to 250K, then straight back up past $1 million. Do you guys think he's gonna keep his million, or do you think he's gonna end up losing it all, similar to another person we've talked about before? This just goes to show that you gotta drop a like and subscribe for Rob's level of luck on your next trade. Seriously though. MoistAd9060 also went on a pretty lucky options trading spree, but may not have had enough luck to keep it. MoistAd originally started with 15K, but unfortunately, the early part of his journey didn't really get posted to Reddit. Which is actually okay, cause we're jumping straight to the action. It was April and MoistAd's $15,000 portfolio was now worth a whopping $82,000. He 5x'd his money and was feeling on top of the world. Every single day, he bought $10,000 worth of 0 DTE SPY puts, and he stuck to it. Spending $300,000 a month on 0 DTE SPY calls is a surefire way to early retirement, and MoistAd was making his way there pretty quickly actually. On April 10th, his portfolio grew to just under 150K. He was up 50% in a day, but wasn't ready to sell his contracts just yet. He held on to all of these overnight and hoped for the best. Particular Base 3390 said, "Road to bankruptcy. Hope you aren't too attached to your kidneys." And Soulful Academics pointed out that he needed to chill out. MoistAd replied with, "Yeah, I realized I was a bit exposed when I took a 122K loss yesterday. Got saved today. Starting Monday, I'll chill." Good thing today was Thursday though. He still had another day of not chilling tomorrow. I-Chan San seemingly unironically says, "Where can I start?" Anyway, MoistAd went to sleep and got ready for his last day of wild trading. He woke up in the red, which is never pleasant, but was only down 2.5%, so it wasn't the end of the world. He opened some new 0 DTE Tesla puts and 0 DTE QQQ puts and closed out his TQQQ calls. He was now full bear mode. He even made the prediction that QQQ would drop 2% that day. Well, by lunchtime, the market was still alive and well, and MoistAd's portfolio was iffy at best. Down 22K for the day with only 12,000 in buying power left. He was hoping for a reversal any second now. A few more hours went by and he was down another 16,000. QQQ finished the day up almost 2%, which is basically the opposite of what he predicted, and his whole portfolio was down $48,000. A lot of users talk trash, but MoistAd told them to calm down. He's learning as he goes, and if he does say so himself, his year-to-date return is pretty darn good. Monday rolled along, which meant that it was time for him to chill out on the ridiculous trades. Did he chill out? Let's find out. As of April 15th, he was down 153K over the past week. To top it all off, he wasn't gonna cut any of his losses. He held on to all of these contracts through the night. MoistAd may have cut his portfolio by about 2/3 from the peak, but he was still pretty motivated to reach his $1 million goal. In fact, he said that this would only delay the process by about 2 to 3 days. Except after that, MoistAd stopped giving us updates. No more posts were made to Wall Street Bets until he suddenly came back 50 days later with some pretty abysmal news. MoistAd's portfolio went from 15 to 353K, then straight back down to 16K in 2 weeks. MoistAd said, "Never thought I'd be making this post, but here we are. Within 2 weeks, I went from $300,000 to PDT violated, margin called, and spiritually humbled. I'm not gonna lie, I was considering launching a hedge fund, called my dad, called my rich uncle. They were shocked, surprisingly supportive while I was winning, and started to discuss hedge fund possibilities. Turns out I wasn't a quant, I'm a changed man. But also a scared one, but it's okay. I started my true bull journey yesterday. Give me a month or two once I clear this PDT Scarlet letter, and I'll be back. Or not. This post was made on June 4th, so we'll see if Moist Dad ever gets his revenge and if his hedge fund comes to fruition. When living in uncertain times, hedging your bets can be a wise move. And with platforms like Kalshi, you can trade on real-world events and can actually use the platform to hedge the positions you have in your stock portfolio. Kalshi is the first legal platform in the US where people can trade on events in all 50 states. You can trade on things like whether or not the Fed will raise interest rates that month, when Trump will end his tariffs against a certain country, and if you're really going for a wild card, on whether or not Elon will rejoin the Trump administration. Kalshi gives you an interactive chart that lets you see how the odds of a given event have changed over time, which is honestly kinda just cool to see even if you're not gonna place a trade on it. And if you weren't already aware, even Robinhood has partnered with Kalshi. On top of this, the first 500 people who sign up using my link down below in the description will get a free $10 credit after placing their first trade. So why not sign up and see what you can do with your bonus? If You Say So is someone who lost a pretty big amount of money and made the realization that the only reasonable course of action was to revenge trade to make it all back. Maybe not so successfully though. On April 22nd, If You Say So was looking for his next golden goose trade that was gonna get him out the $40,000 hole he was in. A couple hours into the trading day, he scooped up $70,000 worth of 0DTE SPY puts. Pretty quickly, his puts went up about 5K, which was nice, but still a far cry from the 40,000 he wanted. He put his phone down and went to get some breakfast. Little did he know, this was a detrimental mistake. In just a few minutes, SPY jumped from $524 to $527. He put the Nvidia bytes down and opened his phone to realize that his $75,000 position was now only worth 20K. Instead of profiting $40,000, he lost 48. He said, "What in the actual F? I belong." The best part of it all was that he sold at literally the worst time to sell at throughout the whole day. F. The contract is up 1.6 now. I hate you guys. Instead of selling for 20K, he could have sold for nearly 90,000 if he held just an hour longer. Year to date, he's down 150K, and it doesn't exactly look like the chart is moving in the right direction either. Apple Snapple Tart is someone who used to frequent the Pokey Investing subreddit, but switched over to Wall Street Bets and blew everyone out the water. Apple Snapple Tart started his trading journey with a measly $437, but do not count him out. He was willing to make the most degenerate trades possible to grow his account. On April 30th, Microsoft was trading at $395. They were reporting earnings after hours, so he maxed out on 2 different out-of-the-money calls, with one of their strike prices being out of the money by about 10%. It was very likely his account would go straight to zero tomorrow morning, but Microsoft completely knocked it out the park. With the stock flying 11% overnight, Apple Snapple Tart's portfolio went from $437 to $7,800. This was an absolute lotto ticket play, but for some reason he felt like YOLOing everything he just gained into yet another crazy options play. On the same day, he threw $7,500, which was basically everything, into calls on HIMS that expired in 2 weeks. Except this time, the stock price had to double for him to even be in the money. If HIMS didn't double in price over the next 2 weeks, all of these sweet gains would be turned to dust. Regardless, the stock was trading at $36 on May 1st, then $41 on May 2nd, then $42 on May 5th, then boom, $50 on May 6th, and $52 on May 7th. 6 days had passed, and the stock was somehow up 44% already. That was great, but it still needed to rise another $18 to be in the money. Except Apple Snapple Tart wasn't going to wait around any longer and sold for nearly $22,000, 3xing his money. So far, this user went from $437 to $22K, and for some reason, he still wasn't satisfied. He quickly threw everything into a mix of SMCI calls with wildly different strike prices, some of them once again needing to double to be in the money, and AMD calls that, like all of his other plays, were also insanely at the money. Anyway, it was the middle of May, and Apple Snapple Chart was ready to reveal his progress. Thanks to SMCI and AMD, his portfolio was no longer worth $22K. It was now worth $121,000. He was up 10,800% over the past month, so by this point, you would expect him to be done trading for good. But he wasn't. He decided to hold on to both of these positions. Both of these companies have stayed completely flat since he posted, but he never updated us with whether or not he sold. If he didn't, it could very well likely be back down to zero, which starts to look a whole lot more likely when looking at his all-time chart. Dr. Dankelberg is a user who was investing money for his dad and almost lost it all. Dr. Dankelberg hasn't posted very much to WallStreetBets, but the post that he does have is quite insane. Dr. Dankelberg says that he made a couple $100s trading options every now and then. Not all that interesting, but apparently his trades caught the attention of his dad, and Dr. Dankelberg Sr. wanted in on that action. His dad gave him $10,000 and let him put it to work, since he thought his son was some sort of stock market genius. The only problem was that he quickly lost half of the money that his dad gave him. Dr. Dankelberg felt like the only way he could get himself out this hole was by repeating his actions. On May 14th, he YOLO'd everything into out-of-the-money United Health puts that expired in 2 weeks. The stock was already down 47% over the past month, so Dr. Dankelberg assumed the fall would continue, because if not, his dad was not gonna see that money ever again. Miraculously though, the following day was another catastrophic day for the stock. It fell over 11% for the day, and his dad's $5,000 balance quickly grew past $30,000. Dr. Dankelberg waited a bit past the peak, but still walked away with a $26,000 gain for the day. Shaq Swaw made enough money to buy a house in a day due to unforeseen circumstances. So far, Shaq's only has 2 posts on the subreddit, but he made sure not to waste any time. It was June 2nd, and CoreWeave had multiplied in money over the past few months. Some people think the stock's rally is a bit undeserved, but that didn't matter because it didn't look like it was going to stop pumping anytime soon. That being said, Shaq's threw $9,200 into calls that expired a few days later. He didn't have to wait very long, and here's, according to him, the result of the gambler's skill combined with luck. He was up nearly $59,000 that day thanks to the stock's 8% rise. These calls still had 2 days left till they expired, but Shaq's, unlike a lot of other users on WallStreetBets, didn't want to push his luck. He sold and locked in a $60,000 profit. And thank goodness he did, because the very next day, CoreWeave fell almost 20%, which would have put him down by more than $45,000. These CoreWeave calls really blessed him up, but Shaq's had another position in his portfolio that was ready to catapult even harder. He woke up on June 5th not yet knowing that it was a big day. Elon Musk and Donald Trump were no longer on great terms, and they were making it public. This is great news for anyone holding Tesla puts, and Shaq's just so happened to be that guy. Elon Musk did the unthinkable. He talked smack about the big, beautiful bill. Trump was very disappointed and said, "Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore." Tesla was down 9% by the middle of the day, but things were just getting started. Elon Musk said, "Without me, Trump would have lost the election. Such ingratitude." Trump fired back with, "Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, and he just went crazy." The final nail in the coffin that sent the stock even lower was when Trump said that the easiest way to save billions and billions would be by terminating Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. By the end of the day, Tesla was down over 14%, and Tesla bulls had nothing left to eat. Tesla bears, though, like Shaq's, were blessed with $250,000. Trump ended things off with, "He hasn't said anything about me that's bad. I'd rather have him criticize me than the bill, because the bill is incredible." Shaq's wasn't the only one who was in on Tesla though. Useful Wishbond 6695 took $140 to 9.8K in a day. Casper took $114 to 13.6K. This fella took 7 to 32K and also had a 12.5 gain the day before that. And Blackline Strategies, well, Blackline Strategies is a bull that wants to know what's going on with his calls. Rough Resource 2900 came to WallStreetBets with only enough money for a PS4, but ended up doing the impossible. It was May 2nd, and Rough Resource had a Webull account with only $300 in it. Despite his low balance, Rough Resource had hopes and dreams, and the way to success was Google. At least that's what he thought. He threw everything he had into Google puts that expired a week later. The stock was trading at $166, and it needed to fall 10% fast, or else his puts would expire worthless. Eventually, there was only 1 day left till his puts expired, and the stock was still $15 away from his strike price, so basically, his puts were worthless. But suddenly, on the day of expiration, Apple came out with news that was not very pleasant for Google. The stock fell 9% in just under 2 hours, and Rough Resource sold his puts for a 3,200% gain for the day. Going from $250 to $6,300 in a week is a jackpot and a half, but Rough Resource wanted to push his luck even further. He took a break for the week, but immediately sprung back into action on May 15th. Google was pretty volatile, and he wanted to stay loyal to the stock, except this time he was done being a bear. He threw everything into Google calls, besides the $210 he had on the sidelines, and hoped for the best. 24 hours later, he opened up Webull to see he was up 550% for the day. With just under $32,000 in his account, most people would think that it's time to walk away, which he was actually gonna do, but not before one last YOLO. The same day he sold his last calls, he bought even more, but this time at the $175 strike price. Google was $3 away from his strike price, so pretty much anything could happen within that week that these calls had till expiration. Luckily, the stock hit his strike price and still had 2 days left till expiration, and he ended up selling for a $70,000 gain for the day. With nearly $83K, he was finally ready to call it quits. Kinda. He decided that he was gonna cash most of it out and leave $25K to trade with. He was also going to pay off his debt, double check that he was subscribed to Yummers, and buy stock instead of options. How is a self-proclaimed fool Porter who's ready to live and die by the YOLO. He made his first post on April 16th with the title, "What do I do to minimize my loss?" We can't see the screenshot he added since the post got deleted, but usually questions like that are not good signs. Anyway, he followed up with another post showing his $700 unrealized loss on his Tesla call. These are baby numbers though, so let's flash forward to May 9th. Howe had $2,300 in his Robinhood portfolio, and he was still eyeing Tesla. The stock had been picking up momentum over the past few days, so he figured he may as well bet the whole farm on out-of-the-money 0 DTE calls. Elon was feeling good that day, so the stock went up 5%. Howe's portfolio blossomed 308% for the day, and he now had $9,300 ready to go. Kylo Zen ATX said, "I wish I knew what any of this was." And Howe replied with, "Don't worry. I just learned it like last week after hours of video on option trade Dinga, and apparently he's dead serious." 3 days later, he was up 35% for the day thanks to SPY. With only $29 on the sidelines, he desperately wanted to know if he should sell or continue holding. Over the next 2 days, he went on a trading rampage and broke past 30K, but by the end of it, he was back down to 14K, with most of his money in United Health puts. He also took a pretty ginormous loss on SPY. Everything that has happened up until this point is pretty crazy considering he started with just 2K, but things are about to get life-changingly crazy. He held onto his United Health puts, and the very next day, the company was hit with an investigation into Medicare fraud by the Department of Justice. Pretty bad times for the company, but splendacious for Howe. He opened up Robinhood that morning, and as the trading bell rang, his account rocketed from 14 to 125K, and best of all, he actually sold and locked in profit. And thank goodness he was going to use this money to continue making smart investments. 1 day later, he YOLO'd up on 200 SPXW contracts, but never gave us an update on that. On May 22nd, he continued his wild trading spree. He made a pretty quick $1,400 gain on Gap, but also threw about $10,000 into 1 DTE SPY puts that initially weren't going so well. Pretty quickly, $2,500 was chopped off his portfolio. Things didn't get any better either. The market rallied higher and higher, and by the end of the day, SPY was just over $10 away from his strike price. A lot of users started doubting him. "These are already worthless, lol. Good luck with your Wendy's application. Thanks for donating your money to the cause." By the end of the day, these calls were down 80%. Then, all of a sudden, Trump recommended 50% tariffs on European goods, which didn't sit well with investors. At open, SPY fell about 2% from its peak at close yesterday, and Howe scrambled to sell his puts. And just like that, he got his hands on another $14,000 in profit. Howe went from up 3K to down 8K to up 14K, and haters were fuming. A few days later, Howe was yet again feeling like an eager bear. He threw $13,000 into way out of the money United Health puts that expired 3 days later. A few hours into the day, his puts were already down $4,500, and he was starting to wonder if he made a mistake. Some people clowned him, saying things like, "Buying puts on a company that's already lost half its market cap. Dead emoji. Wait, never mind. Yep, right sub." Howe didn't give a hoot though, cause what they didn't know was that he was also holding 0 DTE SPY calls that were rocketing. SPY flew 2% that day, and Howe day traded these calls for a $16.8 thousand gain. The following day, he lost a total of $4,700 on a mix of 2 DTE SPY and Nvidia calls. He posted a $3,600 gain with his SPY puts 2 days after that, and his final post was made on May 30th, showing off a modest $1,100 gain. Legitimate Space 8847 has had his fair share of ups and downs over the past 3 years on the subreddit. His first relevant post on Wall Street Bets was made over 3 years ago. Legitimate Space installed a Robinhood update, and when he opened up the app later that day, he was greeted with some unpleasant news. With an account deficit of $230,000, things were not looking good. He got rid of the deficit, which is good, but came back shortly after to share another not so pleasant screenshot. Down just under $21,000 all time, Legitimate Space needed to reevaluate his strategy if he was gonna ever leave Wendy's. But then, he went silent for a whole 2 years. Just because he wasn't posting on the subreddit didn't mean he wasn't trading though. Over this time period, he lost even more tens of thousands of dollars. There was a moment of sunshine though, and he made sure to make it public. He shared his $21,000 gain for the day thanks to AST Space Mobile. He followed up last summer with even more good news. His portfolio was up 422% over the past 3 months and was now worth $86,000. At the end of 2024, he shared another gain, this time $9,700 with SPY puts. But this is where his luck starts to run out again. Back in January, he got himself into another account deficit. This time it was $588K instead of a measly $230K. At the end of February, Legitimate Space was feeling very bullish on Tesla. He threw $70,000 into Tesla shares and calls. Things were off to a rocky start though. His shares were down $10,000 and his calls were down $1,800. His options may have been expiring that day, but so what? He could just buy more, and his shares, those were keepers. But 10 days later, things were still looking pretty grim. He was down at least another $14,000 since last time, and said, "I want to go home." A now deleted user asked, "You're still holding?" And Legitimate Space responded with, "Till my last breath." Then he went on another couple month-long hiatus. Finally, he returned on May 28th with, "You all told me to sell, and guess what I did?" He really did hold through thick and thin, and his shares were now up $6,600 instead of being down $20,000. Y'all have taught me a lot, but one thing I refuse to do is follow the advice that people give here. Ironically though, this post was made only a week before Elon and Trump duked it out. Finally, on June 4th, he said, "I am about to puke." Spellbreaker has been posting on Wall Street Bets for a few months now, but his craziest trade of all time didn't happen until this past month. With United Health being a pretty hot topic for this video, Spellbreaker was yet another person who felt extremely bearish on the company, except he undoubtedly outdid everyone else. On May 12th, he spent $720 on 4 DTE puts that were 8% out of the money. By now, we all know United Health crashed, but just take a look at the point he bought these puts. Unbelievable timing. The next day, his $720 puts 31x'd and he sold for a nearly $22,000 profit. After this, Spellbreaker took a break, but not for long. After only a day of waiting, he got back into the game and took another look at United Health. Despite the stock's 19% drop in 2 days, he still felt like it was doomed to keep falling. 2 hours into the trading day, he scooped up 80 contracts for a grand total of $5,600. The stock needed to fall 6% within the next 2 days, or else his contracts would of course expire worthless. But once again, he somehow picked the perfect time to buy and woke up to another 30x gain the next morning. His puts that were worth $5,600 the day before were now worth $160,000. I mean, just going back and looking at the chart, timing doesn't get much better than this. 8 days after that, he turned $2,400 into $17,000 with 1 DTE Google puts with, once again, seemingly perfect timing. Bonduz32 is someone who hasn't had very much luck throughout his trading journey. He showed us a screenshot of his Webull portfolio, which has a pretty big amount of money in it, most of it in cash. But Bonduz was a failing trader, which is why he asked everyone, is it possible to make 1 to 2% a day with my account? It's down like 800K, but this is what's left. Bonduz's $1 million portfolio was sliced down to 200K, and he was still wondering if it was possible to 12x his money in a year. People told him things like, I don't know, maybe stop doing options and random gambling? He said, yes, just stopped today. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment who had the craziest trade of the meltdown.